Well, thank you very much. Good afternoon. I hope everybody is enjoying the conference. From all signs and the stories I've been hearing, everyone seems like they're getting a lot out of this. I just wanted to make a quick little note there and remind everybody that if you have a cell phone, please put that on vibrate or turn it off if you can. So we have a great opportunity here to hear from someone who I've just spent the last couple of minutes speaking to that very impressive, and the biography that he has, I'm going to actually have to read all the impressive things that he's done, but it's going to be a very informing and entertaining next 30 minutes or 45 minutes or so. So without further ado, James Griffith is actually President and Chief Executive Officer of the Timken Company and a member of the company's board of directors. Mr. Griffith joined the Timken Company in 1984 and has held positions as plant manager, vice president of manufacturing in North America, and managing director of the company's businesses in Australia. From 1996 to 1999, he led Timken's automotive business in North America and the company's bearing business activities in Asia and Latin America. He was elected president and chief operating officer and director in 1999 and was named chief executive officer in 2002. Mr. Griffith is vice president of the World Bearing Association. He's a member of the Management Executive Society and serves on the board of directors on the U.S.-China Business Council, Goodrich Corporation, and Magnet. He also serves on the board to Mount Union College. Mr. Griffith holds a bachelor's degree in industrial engineering and a master's in business administration from Stanford University. So if you would please welcome our keynote speaker for today, Mr. James Griffith.
Thanks, Ron. Let me, before I get to my comments, let me ask you to join me in thanking Industry Week for putting on the Best Plants conference. I understand from the people I've talked to it's been a great conference, and on a very personal basis, I appreciate you staying around to listen to my remarks. So let's say thank you to Industry Week. I understand you've had some controversial discussions, and I hope to contribute to those today, but perhaps on a little more positive note than you've heard. As I was preparing to speak to you, I was struck by the disconnect, a disconnect which I think could have potentially disastrous consequences for the American economy. Every year at this conference, we bring together the best minds in manufacturing in North America. And you understand the state of manufacturing, that manufacturing in this country is defined by excellence, by productivity, by quality, by innovation. Your examples, the companies you work for, are examples of what it's about to make it in America. Yet an enormous gap has emerged between that reality and the perception of the common person in North America. Most people in North America have lost faith in the manufacturing sector. The changes that we in the industry have been going through in order to create a globally competitive footprint have been misinterpreted as signs of weakness, as if we were coddling a frail grandfather instead of rebirthing a vibrant young infant. If the naysayers are right, if American manufacturing is on the decline, on its deathbed instead of a cradle, then we need to get ready for a much less prosperous future as a nation. America's future leadership in the world economy depends on a dynamic, ever-adapting manufacturing sector. Now, that might be controversial all by itself, although perhaps not in this room. Not everybody's going to believe that. But I think as we go through the talk, you'll see it's based on a reading of the facts. Sort of an indicator fact. Half of the R&D in the United States is funded by manufacturing. More than all the universities, all the government, all the private enterprise, and federally funded R&D centers. We employ 12 million people. We pay them above average wages. They employ far more people in related industries than any other industry in North America. Now, those facts don't fit the common perception of manufacturing. And in fact, many people have a hard time believing manufacturing is strong, even if it's put right in their face. Let me share with you a quote out of the LA Times this month, and I quote, "Improbable as it seems, the brightest spot so far in the nation's spotty economic recovery," there's a California bias in this already, is a sector long considered all but dead, good old-fashioned manufacturing. Even old-line manufacturers, such as Caterpillar, are calling back workers. It's not the words, it's the innuendo that is significant in that. Now let me give you another quote. How many of you have read The World is Flat? How many of you believe it? I'll tell you, I do. But there's a certain sense of it that I think is misleading, and it got my attention. This is one of the leap out of your chair kind of moments when Tom Friedman talks about offshoring, sensitive subject. Quote, "Offshoring is when a company takes one of its factories that's located in Canton, Ohio, and picks it up and moves it intact to Canton, China." You know where Timken's headquartered? Canton, Ohio. That's hitting pretty close to home. In fact, when I read that, I thought, he's picking on me. And in fact, I debated that, whether it was a play on words because Canton and Canton. And yet, as you read the book, you do get the sense he's picking on us, because in the book, the innuendo says, the only future for manufacturing is in China. And I think you heard a little bit about the policy implications of that this morning. Yet the facts are that the U.S. share of global manufacturing has not declined since 1980. We still make 22% of the manufactured goods in the world, to China's 13%. If U.S. manufacturing were a nation, it would be the 8th largest economy in the world. Now, try to imagine a positive economic future for America if we didn't have that manufacturing strength. Somehow, though, those facts don't come through in the public debate. That's why the examples, what you're doing here at the Best Plants Conference, the successful examples that you've talked about for the last 2.5 days, are so important. They prove that we are making it in America. They demonstrate that we have the capability to compete in the global economy. In fact, in the past decade, American manufacturers have defined a new recipe for successful manufacturing in North America. It differs a bit by industry, but I think you'll all recognize it because there's some common elements to it. It starts with what you've been talking about here, operational excellence. Great companies start with a foundation of operational excellence. They drive productivity, they drive quality, they drive safety, they drive reliability. It's the fundamental underpinning of a strategy that can make companies successful. And you're demonstrating it's alive and well in the United States. But then they go on and add some other ingredients. They supplement it with a relentless focus on innovation. In The World is Flat, Mr. Friedman uses the parable, which I'm sure you've heard, of the gazelle and the lion, to talk about the importance of speed. You know, the story that the gazelle gets up in the morning thinking, I've got to get away, and the lion gets up in the morning and says, I've got to eat, and whoever's fastest lives to eat that night. Well, underlying that is a fundamental fact. If the gazelle stands still too long, he dies. That's also true of manufacturing. If we stand still from a product, process, business model point of view, we get copied and we die. Most people think of innovation as a Silicon Valley internet kind of thing. But successful manufacturers pursue it, focusing on better products, better processes, and even better business models. Let me share with you an example from right here in Northeast Ohio. There's a little town south of here, about an hour south of here, called Brewster, Ohio. I'm sure you've never heard of it. And there's a company there called Shearer's. Shears makes potato chips. Shears took an old family recipe called kettle-cooked chips and leveraged it in the marketplace. And right here in Northeast Ohio, this isn't Idaho, this isn't Maine, this isn't the potato state, they have generated year after year after year of double-digit growth in sales, employment, and profitability. Innovation isn't just for computer chips. It's just as effective in potato chips. The next step, in order to build that kind of innovation, great companies have to have the next ingredient. They have to have the best people. Gone are the days when you get out of high school, grab your diploma, go to the shop, and get a big paycheck. Competitive factories have to have world competitive, highly skilled, agile workforce capable of competing on a global basis. I mean, let me give you a point of reference. I was in India last week. We have a new plant in Chennai. And I was sitting with the management team, and I said, what's the caliber of the workforce that we're dealing with here? They put up a pie chart. 89% of the people in the plant have a college degree. Now, if low-cost countries are putting that kind of a workforce in place, it tells you that the paradigm for manufacturing has changed. And finally, final ingredient in the recipe, they are embracing rather than resisting globalization. Successful companies find ways to leverage the changes going on in the global economy. They do it oftentimes by being introspective and figuring out what their real strategic competencies are. What are the things they do better than anybody else in the world? Opportunities come in the form of new markets, new suppliers, and new relationships. Again, let me give you an example, this time from Timken. Timken's had a long-term relationship with a Japanese company called Daido Steel. We're basically in the same business. We make super high-quality alloy steel products. Because we don't compete head-to-head, we've shared technology over the years. And out of that technology sharing has come a sense of trust. Last year, we put together a relationship founded on that trust, where we have Daido Steel manufacture Timken products in Japan, which we sell to our Asian customers. It allows us to grow our steel business, expand the variety of products available to our customers without investing in a new mill. And it gives Daido the promise of regular orders to go through their mill. Now, obviously, this is built on a long-term relationship and lots of trust because we're sharing proprietary Timken recipes, formulas for making steel. The necessity for this kind of global integration is not very well understood and, I'll say, broadly resisted. In America, people call it offshoring. Outside of America, people call it resisted as the Americanization of their cultures. Now, those costs are very real. Those issues are real issues that people have to deal with. What they miss is that the benefits are just as real. Those of you who have been to China have seen those benefits in the most graphic way I've ever seen it. Since 1980, 300 million people in China have been lifted out of poverty. It shouldn't surprise us that the hand-in-hand progress of global trade and industrialization has cut the level of world poverty in half since 1981. More children are going to school, more children are being educated, a middle class is emerging, and that middle class is now a market for American products. Globally integrated companies invest around the world, not only in plants and process, but they invest in people. They invest in communities. They invest in state-of-the-art safe workplaces. They invest and volunteer in the communities, supporting advanced education, making better places for people to live. And that's the real impression people in those countries, customers, suppliers, government officials, see of America. Certainly, in our case, that's where they appreciate what the Timken Company is. At the same time, the rapid emergence of new markets, of Asian markets, creates an unprecedented growth opportunity for manufacturers with value-added technology. At the turn of the 20th century, now I got to be careful, at the first turn of the 20th century, the beginning of the 20th century, Winston Churchill made a name for himself when he took his first seat in Parliament. England was at the thought of itself at the decline of the empire. They were trying to protect themselves, and a protectionist trend was rumbling through England. And he went around giving speeches on the importance of free trade. And his basic message was England would be better off if they would gladly accept cheap foreign, in our terms today, low technology goods and use them to manufacture higher value goods, therefore creating better jobs, better profit margins, and moving England up the economic ladder. Value-added manufacturing, which takes that same concept, is the sweet spot of American industry. It incorporates all of the elements I talked about. It talks about operational excellence, innovation, best people, and global integration. Consider how American manufacturers have leveraged this idea of value-added industries and global manufacturing. Here's some examples. American manufacturers sold a record $257 billion in aerospace products and services in 2008. America remains the world's largest supplier of chemical products. American companies produce more than half of the $175 billion of healthcare technologies sold around the world. Value-added industries, manufacturing with value-added industries leading the way, manufacturing output in the United States was actually 2/3 higher in 2008 than it was in 1993 when the NAFTA agreement was signed. We have figured out how to compete in the global economy, and we aren't looking back. We've gotten lean, we've gotten operationally excellent, we have an agile workforce, we employ more high-skilled people, from master mechanics to multi-degreed engineers, in building a successful manufacturing base. At the Timken Company, we've embraced this model over the last decade and used it to make ourselves a much better company. For our first 100 years, and I mean that literally, for our first 100 years, we focused on making the heritage product of the company, a narrow range of products actually called a tapered roller bearing that was invented by our founder. So those of you who went to our steel mill probably heard the message that we originally invested in steel simply as a quality control mechanism to assure the supply of clean steel to make the world's best tapered roller bearings. With the emergence of a global economy, we recognized that to compete effectively, we had to broaden our playing field. We went beyond bearings, beyond steel, into power transmission components and services that make machines run better. Instead of focusing on defense, we went on the offense, leveraging our capabilities, expanding our product range, and expanding our geographic range, focusing on energy-efficient, high-performance technologies for world's aircraft, wind generation, power generation, oil wells, manufacturing equipment, trains, and mobile equipment. We have quadrupled our sales in Asia and our employment in Asia, but at the same time maintain a U.S. manufacturing base so strong that in 2009 we generated $400 million in exports, be careful, out of the United States to the rest of the world. Much of our success as individual companies depends on competitiveness. So too for countries. And when it comes to being competitive, the United States tops the list on virtually every economic measure. From the point of view of scientific and technological breakthrough to R&D spending, of which I said nearly a third of which is paid for by manufacturing companies, And with all of this progress, and I'm being as upbeat as I can, you got to kind of step back and say, Americans are basically upbeat people. We're an optimistic people. Why are people so pessimistic about manufacturing? Well, those of us in manufacturing knows that metrics count, and in this case, metrics is one of the problems, because the popular press equates success in manufacturing with jobs. And on that reality, we have fallen short. In fact, the employment in manufacturing in North America or in the United States has dropped in the past 20 years by about 33% to 12 million people. But it's only half the story. The output of manufacturing has grown by 30%. Now, plant managers in the room, output's up 30%, employment's down 30%. What does that mean? Plant manager? That means productivity. As CEO, it means you're making money. But plant manager, that means productivity. And in fact, there has been a productivity explosion in manufacturing. We, meaning manufacturers, lead the nation in terms of productivity, with an average 1.5% per year, how do I say this, delta of productivity versus all other non-farm employment. And that improvement in productivity over the past 20 years has translated to an increased standard of living. Our GDP per capita over the last 20 years has doubled based on that productivity improvement that is driven by people in this room. The bottom line, manufacturing is a key to American prosperity. It has been in the past, it is today, and it will be tomorrow. Those of us in this room can provide a resounding reply to Tom Friedman and his question of whether America's manufacturers can survive in this flattening global economy. The answer is, you better bet we're making it in America. Our manufacturing industry is playing on a new playing field with a new game plan, and the Industry Week's Best Plants Conference is a great example of how we're winning. American industrialists, on top of that, are leading on a global stage, taking their values to foreign countries, expanding our culture, building trust, attracting employees, building relationships with suppliers, and in that process, filling a higher purpose, contributing to the quality of life, the communities we live in, as well as people around the world. American manufacturers are to thank for that progress in the global economy. Now, as you leave here today, I'm going to ask you to do two things. One is, you came here with a personal success story. That's why you came. And many of you have shared it here at Industry Week. As you go home, commit yourself to tell the story. Go into schools. Go to scout troops. Go into community groups. Educate the public. Help them understand what this manufacturing thing is all about. And let our policymakers know what you're doing, so as they make policy, they're focusing on helping us rather than hindering us. We can't allow the rhetoric of ignorance and fear to interfere with our success. And then secondly, stick your chest out a little bit. Take some real pride in what you do, because what you're doing on a day-to-day basis is contributing to make America an economic superpower in the world. And that, in fact, translates into the American dream, not just for us in America, but for people around the world. That dream is alive and well in U.S. manufacturing, but it can't be sustained without it. What we, or I'll say it differently, as long as you keep making it America, the American dream is alive and well. Thank you very much. Now, I can't imagine anybody has any questions on that or wants to debate that, but I understand you've had some pretty controversial discussions And we've got a few minutes. I'm very happy to engage in a discussion or answer questions. There are mics around the room, and I'll move away from the mics so perhaps I can get ahead of the lights and actually see you. Questions? I started asking if the press was here. That'd be a really silly thing to say to you. Can I give my opinion of what's going on in the automotive industry? Wow. Let me, those of you who know Timken, or if you get out on the internet and study Timken, you'll know that we've been in the auto industry since Henry Ford and Henry Timken were bosom buddies. We've been in the auto industry, I think, since 1901. We made a very conscious decision in 2007 to de-emphasize our auto business. And so as opposed to talking about what's going on in Detroit, let me talk about it a little bit from Timken's point of view and perhaps share with you the sense of why that is. And it goes back to the 4 points that I made that I think are critical to manufacturing. To success for manufacturing companies. You've got to have operational excellence. Okay, we do in our automotive plants. It's spotty across the big three, and I assume that's what you meant, not Toyota. I mean, some of them are doing a great job. I don't know if there are people here. Certainly, that's the foundation on which Ford has rebuilt itself in the last 10 or 20 years. So that's really, really powerful from that point of view. The element where I think the auto industry stumbled, and I think they stumbled probably 10 years ago, is in this area of innovation. And I really think what's happened is the 3 North American automotive players got caught in a trap where they had given away benefits, long-term benefits, pension, that were so rich that all their excess cash was going into that, and they were underinvesting in innovation. And so they got into a trap where they got behind that curve. And certainly we saw it. We weren't given the opportunities at Timken to provide the level of innovation that was necessary to keep our products ahead of the competition. And so it's a bad market for us. We can't innovate. We're standing still. We're the gazelle. We're going to get picked off. And if you go back and look at the profitability of our auto business, you'd see that was happening. It wasn't moving fast enough to stay away from foreign competition. So we've downsized it. We've cut it in half in the last 2 years through both some pricing actions and some strategic actions. And I think that's the process they're now going through. Now, turn it around and look at what Ford is doing. And I just picked them out as the positive example. When Alan Mulally went in, he went in with exactly that sense. He said, we got to get lean. And Boeing runs a great lean program. So he brought a lean program in, but he did lean top to bottom, VP office all the way to the shop floor. And then he said, we got to have new products. And he said, I don't have money to invest in new products. Americans are going to have to learn to drive European cars. We're going to have one car across the world so that we can, in fact, innovate. And so I think what you see in Ford, at least, is the roots of the resurgence of a company built on those same basic principles. And you're also seeing some of the same things out of General Motors as you start to see the executive suites start to change as they're out trying to figure out how do we get the best team together, because we know we've got to do it differently, faster, better, more innovatively, as well as the operational excellence that we all are focused on. Is that controversial? I don't know. Questions? Positions? Arguments?
I've got a question for you over on your left. Could you talk a bit more about the growth opportunities that you see for U.S.-based steelmakers such as Timken, the growth opportunities that you see in India and Asia going forward?
Yeah, just a comment, and this is now a little contrast. You had Nucor in here this morning. Those of you who went to Faircrest have seen Timken's premier steel facility. The difference between Nucor and Timken is the facility that you went through that Ron runs exports to China. And that's just a little different game. So why do we export to China? Are we lower cost? Well, yeah, probably, but that's not why we export. We export because what we make, they can't make. And I will tell you, I remember it was like it was yesterday when that hit me. I was making a sales call with our bearing team in Tianjin, and we went into a place that was making big gearboxes, and they had 12-inch machining bars sitting on the ground. And I said, "Where do you get your steel?" It was being exported from Europe. Well, okay, we're not competing with the Chinese. We're competing with the Europeans. We can compete with the Europeans. And we sat back, and we now had 3,000 people in China, some of them with 10 years with the company, who focused in that area where, because we sell bearings in that space, we were dealing with people that make big, heavy equipment. We went out and sourced the market. And I don't know, one of our guys might know, but I think last year the answer was we shipped 30,000 tons of steel to China into those niche markets. And we're doing the same thing in India and Australia and Southeast Asia. Again, just to reinforce my point, the management team at the Faircrest Mill that toured you through, 15% of their bonus every year is based on new product development. And 35% of what they sell didn't exist 5 years ago. So, I mean, it's a different business model. And that's why. That's why there's a market for that product, because we're constantly innovating. Yes?
You had talked a little bit about the misconceptions of manufacturing, what Tom Friedman had written, and that there's a great deal of misunderstanding perpetuated by the media. You had said some pretty controversial things. I'd like to turn it around, though, and ask you what concerns you about U.S. manufacturing. What keeps you awake at night when you think about the policies of the government and what we're doing collectively?
Yeah, but you're the media, right?
Technically, yes.
Okay.
But trade media, very different.
Okay. Well, let me again. I explained this at the table with the editorial group. I'm a plant guy. I'm not a politics guy. I mean, I do it, but I'm not a politics guy. And I fundamentally believe that success is in our hands. And you've got to start and you've got to deal with the things that you control. And the thing that keeps me awake at night is that we don't innovate fast enough. And we're working here in Northeast Ohio to create an innovation-based economy from that point of view. And there's some signs that it's working. But that is my concern, that we, as manufacturers, think we make things. And that's what it's all about. And we do. I mean, we do make things. But to make money, we've got to innovate both in processes. That's what Best Plants is all about. But also in products. And too many of us got in the habit of, geez, Detroit made cars for 100 years. We got to know how to do that, as opposed to what's the next mode of transportation. And in our business, the same thing. What's the next kind of product that we need to have on the market? What's the next process change? And we just don't think in terms of the pace of change that you feel when you stand on the street of Shanghai. And that would be my biggest concern. Now, from a governmental policy point of view, it kind of now fits this philosophy. And what concerns me about the Obama administration is they think they can solve the problems. And government's not going to solve our problems. They may contribute to make it more difficult to solve. The discussion you had this morning about currency rates and the currency manipulation, that stuff's all real. And the ability to manage that. They may make policies that make it easier for us to compete. But the solution's not Washington. The solution's in this room. And we as a society, again, my concern is we don't believe that. You believe it?
I'm coming over with a microphone right now. Probably straight back.
I got you.
Sorry. Good afternoon. Thank you for your talk today. A little bit of how you talked about society and having a role. So I'm trying to formulate this question still, but what do you think then the average consumer has, or responsibility that the average consumer has, and or that the average person in a plant has when making decisions based on which country or what location to purchase goods and services from?
Well, that's a great question. What, you asked the question. Do you have an opinion?
I can give you a recent example. Wanted to buy a playground for my kids. So I did some research, and I went and I got a rainbow play system that's made with North American wood products, and it's a U.S.-based company. And when comparing it to companies at a Walmart or a Sam's Club, they utilize Chinese cedar. So I went with the U.S., and I probably paid 2 times. I'm fortunate enough that, and blessed enough that I'm able to do that, and not everyone can. I have certain purchasing practices, which there are certain shops and stores that I do not purchase from because I don't agree with their ethics.
What business are you in?
Which company?
Yeah.
With Graphtec.
Oh, with Graphtec. Okay. Okay. Do you guys sell to the Chinese steel mills?
Not much. I'm not associated necessarily too much with that line of business. Line of business I work in is natural graphite,
okay.
And we export a tremendous amount of our product over to Asia.
Do you care whether they have the ability to buy?
Do I care if they have the ability to buy the products? Yes.
Does your job?
Well,
does your job depend on those exports?
My job depends upon, I would say, the world community's ability to buy technological advanced products.
But you won't buy their products, but you want them to buy yours.
Well, I mean that's where I'm at right now. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean I think that's the challenge we all. I mean you can think of it in terms of I live in North Canton, Ohio, and there's bumper stickers that say "Buy North Canton, don't buy from Jackson Township." And you got to be careful about that. At Timken, we used to make 100% of the retainers that hold rollers on a bearing. Today we make effectively 0%. And they come from 2 companies. One, a Japanese company, came over here and set up plant in America, and that's got us the confidence to your playset to let somebody else manufacture it. But they have been largely supplanted by a small privately held company in northern India who grew up serving our Indian division, and with a little technical help from us and great, if there's anybody here from Juergens, I know Jack Schron's been to see him, world-class manufacturing. They supply us on a global basis and make us more competitive because they are the low-cost, high-quality source in the world. And now, conversely, I was in India last week, and we have a large bearing facility in Wuxi, China. And today, our Indian customers are used to getting large bearings made in Western Europe or made in America. We're now shipping them made in China. And the customer said, "How do I deal with the fact this is made in China?" I said, "It doesn't matter. It says Timken on it. It's going to be the same. No matter where it comes from, it's going to be the highest quality, best cost. And that's the way you should make your decision." So for me to say anything other than that we as consumers have an obligation to support the best supplier. Now, again, there's a whole lot of defining around that in terms of fair trade, free trade, and that sort of thing. But there's a whole realm of economic history that says free trade, and I'll say fair trade because there's a lot of unfair trade that goes on. Fair trade makes the whole economy better, and protectionism hurts all parts of the economy. Now, what you do as an individual, that's your own conscience. I mean, that is your own conscience. But for the economy as a whole, for the global economy, we've got to embrace globalization. And so when you go buy a car, you have an obligation to buy the best car available at the lowest price. If you come buy bearings, that's what I would tell you. And my obligation as an industrialist is to make sure the best at the lowest price is marked TIMKEN. That maybe doesn't play very well in Cleveland. This is now a sign of being old. I can remember when that change happened. I was purchasing manager back in 1979, and we wouldn't buy anything in that day. Detroit wouldn't buy anything that wasn't made in America. And suddenly when the Japanese car makers started coming to this country, Detroit had to go look at the world and buy the world's best technology. Faircrest, the melting technology is German. The ingot making technology is Japanese. I don't know where the rolling mill came from. It's the best in the world. Now we're the best in the world. I mean, that's a bit the philosophy I think that we all have to adopt. Now I've been really controversial. Yeah, question over here.
So first, just thank you for being here and also for offering a tour. For a voice of one, though, I can tell you there's one area that I'm uncomfortable with, and that's the lack of participation from looking around. The number of Timken people, the number of Northeast Ohio large manufacturing people. Where's the Eaton, Parker Hannifin, Rockwell, Smuckers? I would feel a lot more comfortable if there were more participating in the Best Plants Conference to share.
I agree with you. In fact, we had that discussion. And just for those of you who are Northeast Ohio based, I was the founding chair about 5 years ago of an organization called the Manufacturers Advocacy and Growth Network. Because if you talk about manufacturing having a bad name nationally, it's got it in spades in Northeast Ohio, because you take all the statistics on job losses, you double them here. You take if you drive east of here in Cleveland, you go into no man's land. There's a no man's land in downtown Canton. I mean, it is a region that has been disproportionately hit by that globalization of the economy. There is a group of manufacturers who have banded together in this organization called Magnet that is focused on rebuilding the capability of Northeast Ohio to do it. And all the companies that you talk about are part of it. Swagelok, I think there's some Swagelok people here. Art Anton is the chair. I was the chair. There's Lincoln people here. John Stropke is on the board. Lots of small companies on the board. And we're focusing on this message that I gave you. We're focusing on promoting best operating capabilities. We're focusing on working with the schools to bring people into manufacturing, to make it exciting. We're focusing on the image of manufacturing. And we just hired a guy to lead an innovation effort to try to link what goes on in the universities and what goes on in companies to increase that pace of innovation here, because it's a very real issue. Now, for whatever reason, apparently there was a breakdown in communications, and I share your disappointment. Now, there is a Timken table in the back, and they've been here all week. They didn't come up to listen to me, so we are supporting it. And we've won the Best Plant Award at least a couple of times. Faircrest won it, didn't they, Ron? Yeah. And our plant in Bucyrus, Ohio, won it about 15 years ago. Thank you for those of you not from Northeast Ohio coming and pumping a few dollars into our economy. We appreciate that as well. Anything else? Well, again, thank you for your passion about manufacturing. I really do believe what I said. What you're doing is the foundation stone to the competitiveness of our country. You know, back when Toyota was beating GM in the early days, it wasn't operational excellence differentiation that allowed them to do that. We don't have that anymore because of what you're doing. And that gives us the chance to compete. And as I said, I do believe in the winning companies, the kind of companies that are represented here. We are winning that battle. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Wow. Very good stuff, obviously. To vote for Jim, no, I know he didn't want me to say that, but this is a great example of giving back. We talk about a manufacturing community giving back information through Best Plants, the conference itself, and also, everything that we do at Industry Week, and really for everything that we handle through the manufacturing supply chain group over at Penton, whether it's in print or online or through these conferences. It's our editors reaching out there and giving best practices to each other. And I think it's important that we continue these type of dialogues and not just meet once a year. So I want to thank everyone for their participation, and especially for the strong turnout that we had this year. Everyone received a survey, and that's part of that feedback that we need to make our, not only the conferences, but the information that you want better. So please take the time to fill out those surveys, drop them off at the registration desk. We really appreciate that. Next year, we'll be in Atlanta. I think that's April 4th through the 6th. I want to thank Erica Bailey for all the effort her team put together around the clock to make everything here happen. But most importantly, thank you. This is a great conference.